I'd like to call this meeting to order for the Budget Advisory Commission. I'm going to turn it over to you, Lance, for a roll call.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Nolan Cloud.
I'm present.
Alyssa.
Present.
Jonathan.
Sorry, here but on mute.
Okay. Carla.
I'm here.
Jimmy.
Present.
Lindy.
Hi, here. Sorry I was late.
Okay. Tasha. Lindsay. All right. It looks like you have 6. I expect Tasha and Lindsay, but I expect Lindsay late.
Okay. Then in that case, I don't know if everyone's had a chance to take a look at the agenda that was sent out, but I would entertain a motion to approve, or if anyone wants to make an amendment to it. And actually, you know what? One item maybe that I should mention, Lance, is that I think that our November meeting the last couple of years is when we've done our elections for chair and vice chair, and I don't know if that's something that we should fit into today's meeting or not, but it might make sense to do.
It's up to you. I would prefer if you did it when you had as many of the members present as possible, and I think you can go to December, or if you have a special meeting next week, but I will leave it up to you. Looks like we have Tasha.
Yeah. Does anyone have a preference on that? Whether if we do elections, if we wait until December or to a work session meeting next week? Well, we could add it to. We could probably if we do a work session next week, we could add it. Is that November 13th one a work session for this group? Is that what we're picturing?
I think what I was going to propose is you actually do a continuation of this meeting to November 12th, which would be next Thursday. If your calendars permit, it would not be a work session. It would just be a continuation of this meeting. And so it would be a regular continuation of BAC meeting with action items on it rather than a work session.
Okay, then why don't we do our board elections then? If we do it at a continuation meeting, then let's do that, and then keep this agenda as is.
Okay.
So is there a second for approval of the agenda, or an amendment anyone wants to make?
This is Jimmy. I second.
Or sorry, I didn't make we needed a motion and a second, right?
Yes.
I will move.
All right, a second.
This is Alyssa. I'll second.
All right. Unless there's any opposition, then I think we can move on. First up, we have for informational reports. Actually, this action item you've got here, Lance, for the 2021 proposed budgets, is that what's our action that we need to take on that before the informational reports?
When I put the agenda together, I was thinking that we might be at a place after the work session to start looking at that. So I guess what I would suggest is that if not at the end of today, that would be our action item. We would move to November 12th, which would be a resolution on the proposed budgets.
Okay, very good. Then we can set that aside and move to informational reports then.
That would be great.
All right. So it looks like I don't think we have anyone from the assembly to give an update.
I tell you what, I will jump in, and then if we get somebody from the assembly office or an assembly member, I'll let them add to it. But very briefly, so the assembly right now, they are in the middle of their works or their public hearings on the budget. They had a public hearing on the budget on October 27th. They had another one last night. The chair has scheduled a third public hearing on the budgets for next Tuesday. It is the only item on the agenda. So I know they'll be looking at that, and then they are scheduled to have a work session on their proposed amendments on the 13th, which is a week from tomorrow, on all of the budgets. I think the other thing I would mention is the Assembly took action last night to adjust the taxes on vaping and tobacco products. That was approved last night. What it would do is, I think the number is about $800,000 additional in revenue, but that 800,000 is inside the cap. So it doesn't provide additional resources, it just provides property tax relief. They approved that last night. They were looking at a measure to offer tax relief to personal property taxes for 2021. That motion did not pass last night. It failed 5-5. Let's see, what else have they done? The sale of ML&P has occurred, and so all of the actions that the Assembly needed to take to make sure that the receipt of the money, which we received last Friday, has been received and deposited. As a result of that, we did make an adjustment last night at the Assembly. The amount of money that we had budgeted to put into the trust as a result of the sale was to be, I think, a total amount of 13.4 million. After the proceeds were done and after the sale was done, the amount was 14 million. So the amount of return on the trust to general government in 2020 is about 600,000 more than we had previously budgeted. They have appropriated those dollars last night for 2020. I think those are the kind of budget related items. They've been that I think are relevant to the Budget Advisory Commission. And then they have a work session right after this on the alcohol tax. So if some of you would like to listen in or call in, I can have Lila send you the link while we're here if you don't already have it. So that's one of the reasons I asked that we move this meeting from 11 to 12:30. Their work session starts at 12:40. So that's what's going on in the world of the Assembly.
Okay, yeah, if you could share that link, or Lila could share that link, that would be good. I think that's definitely an issue that a lot of us were paying close attention to.
Okay. I'm going to send it to Lila. So if you just give me a minute, please.
Sure. And the next item up is an update from the school district, and I do not see that we have Andy on or anyone else from the school district, do we?
I don't see him on. You're correct.
Let me try adding him here.
All right, let's see if he's on. Okay. So Mr. Chairman, if you'd like, let's just go ahead to OMB, and
Yeah.
we'll start with reports. So for 2020, the budget to actuals report, where we are right now, it's end of October, September. I think this last place we were at about 67% through the end of the year at the end of September, and going by memory, I don't have the report in front of me, and we were about 64% spent overall. So the departments are still looking pretty good right now. I think one of the so there are two departments that I know are going to be over. One is police, one is fire. Fire is going to be over as a result of unexpected cash leave-in. I mentioned that I think I mentioned that we were expecting that. And the police department is, it's also going to be in their labor. They also had some significant amount of additional leave cash in that they hadn't otherwise budgeted. I don't really know what the sum is, but I'm going to guess it's going to be around 2 to 3 million for the both of them combined, as we've been working with them to try to narrow it down. Maintenance and operations is looking pretty good. All of the non-labor activities are looking pretty good. So the next report we have is we are working on our third quarter report that we're reviewing right now. That'll go to the assembly. That will also include the information from the utilities. And that at the end of October, I think also I saw some preliminary information. Departments are looking pretty good as well. So that's about all I have for on the 2020 status.
Okay, Lance, I did note, it looks like Andy just joined us a little bit ago too, and so I wanted to see if maybe he could give us a quick update on ASD.
Okay.
Sure, thank you.
Linus?
So this is Andy from Anchor School District. Just give a quick update on our estimates for this year and our timeline for the rest of the year for next year's budget. Right now, our preliminary OASIS count was about 200 or so unadjusted ADM lower than FY20, about 9.2%. About 5,800 of those are neighborhood schools, like about a 13.2% decrease. And then we had about 150% increase in our correspondence schools, which are primarily run by Family Partnership Charter School and Frontier Charter School. There is a district, Paideia, which is a correspondence school, but it's not charter. So the decrease in all these students, and we did have a decrease in about 6.8% or so of our intensive needs students. So the net result of all this is about a $12 million loss in state and local funding for the district's 21 budget. The other part of that was we owe about $11 million of that to correspondence, or $11 million to correspondence schools, increased revenue associated with it that we're statutorily obligated to give over to the charter schools. So the district is trying to prepare for that hit. We think we can absorb it primarily through using some of our fund, drawing down some of our fund balance, and then we've got about 200 open positions that that'll remain, or should mostly remain unfilled for the rest of the year. So that'll help out with trying to mitigate some of those losses. As far as the next steps, the school board had a work session on Tuesday to discuss their budget priorities, and a lot of it just centered around, here's the goals and guardrails that we want you guys to work in, kind of this broad framework that hasn't quite been fully developed yet. So we're waiting for that to come out as far as some direction in preparing our FY22 budget. On December 1st, we'll enter pro forma budget, which is really, here's how much it's going to cost to provide the same level of services as the current year. We adjust it for projected enrollment and then any other revenue changes that we know of. That'll be introduced December 1st. Hopefully I can give you a presentation on that in your December BAC meeting, which will really show what our debt like for how much we'll have to. Then that'll be approved by the board at their second meeting in December, and then we'll introduce the budget sometime before the February 2nd school board meeting for approval on the 16th. And then we have to submit it to the city by the first Monday in March, which I don't know, Lance, if you know when your March meetings are yet, but that would be helpful for us in some planning.
The March meetings for the assembly or for the BAC?
For the assembly.
I do know that. I will send you the calendar.
Perfect, thank you. That's really all I have as far as an update. I'm sure you've seen schools planning to reopen for kindergarten through second grade on the 16th, and then with some special education classrooms coming back as well. That's all I have. If you have any questions.
Sure. Yeah. Questions for Andy on ASD. Not directly a budget question, Andy, but what was some of the reasoning for the decision to bring the kids back to in-person classes? Anyway, it seemed like I was sometimes puzzled about that.
Frankly, I haven't really been involved in conversations Dr. Bishop and Dr. Stock have been having with their teams and to decide on re-entry. But my understanding is the research they've done with other large districts bringing classes back, hasn't been the students that have been spread it, and then the mental health of those students staying at home too. So they have a lot of factors they're considering in pushing this back, but I don't know that I'm totally qualified to answer exactly how they came to their decision.
Sure. Thank you. Anyone else questions for Andy? Hearing none, I think we move on to our next item then, which is Lance, back to 2021.
Thank you. So, so for the BAC members that were able to attend the work session last week, thank you very much. For those that may not have been, I think the effort was very good to have an opportunity to review those departments in which the BAC members met with directors, and we spent some time talking about each one of those and then having the BAC members reflect on that. I think the department that we did not get to was finance, but where we left off was health. And so what I'd like to do is kind of recap with health. It was at the end of the meeting with Tasha. And the other reason is that what we were going to do is then look at the alcohol tax today. But so my plan today would be to finish up those departments that the BAC had an opportunity to look at, and then talk a little bit about the alcohol tax. And then if you folks have questions on, and then talk about the utilities. And I particularly want to talk about AWWU in a similar format that I did last week. So I have the kind of the steps forward. I have drafted a resolution. I was working on it last night while I was at the assembly. I will ask Lila to share it when we get to that point. And then as I mentioned earlier, my plan would be to finish our conversations here, have the BAC think about what they would like in that, what they would like in the resolution, and then ask you to work through that in the next 3 or 4 days, and then get back to me next week, and then we can act on it next Thursday. So, Mr. Chairman, I think that's what I'd like to do, unless there's a different approach that you would like to take, or you have some comments from members of the committee.
I like that approach, but anyone else have input or comments or questions?
Okay. So I'm going to just start with health and just recap. I think Jonathan, you might, I don't know if you were able to make it, and I know, can't remember who else is on today that wasn't able to be there, but just as a reminder to the BAC, basically what we have this continuation budget, and this is the one I think we ended with the health department, and where we were is with the health department is for all of the departments that we talked about, what we've illustrated are the information that's just related to their direct cost budget, does not include any additions to the alcohol tax. And as we recall, the health department, like many departments, we've adjusted some salaries, they had some contractual things. And then I recall us talking about the homeless sheltering. As you may recall, that $200,000 number is half a year of what the cost is for the Brother Francis shelter down on 3rd Avenue. This is a different amount of money and a separate color of money that Brother Francis and Beans is using to support the Sullivan Arena. This is just for the facility down on 3rd Avenue. So we're still trying to figure out exactly how their services are going to be provided, the level of service, but this $200,000 is for that. And then we mentioned the move of the cemetery from from health to Parks and Rec. And Carla, I'm still working on getting a response to a question you asked, which was, with that move, what are the efficiencies that might be gained through that process if going over to Parks and Rec? And so I'm working with Parks and Rec to get that response to you, and I'll share it with the other BAC members. I'm still working on getting that answer to you. So I think in the health department, the other thing that that I recall our conversations, Tasha, with Deanne and the new health director, Heather Harris, is that, as an organization, given the type of work that they do in a community our size, they're particularly understaffed. They really are doing the best that they can with the resources they have. They are limited in the amount of nurses that they would like to be able to reach out to the community and serve the public in the ways that they normally do. There's some internal support that they haven't been able to fund in the past couple of years inside their operating budget, and so they're really super constrained. They are also they are at the tip of the spear when it comes to our response to COVID. A lot of the additional resources that have been afforded to the health department in 2020 and projected in 2021 have been as a result of money coming in from the CARES Act to support additional nurses, additional support, additional response to COVID. And then they have a proposal as it relates to the alcohol tax for either a continuation of the positions that they started with COVID in that response. And if that response calms down, then those additional, those same resources could then be reallocated and repurposed and then funded with the alcohol tax. That's I think the conversation that the health department is at right now. So Tasha, before I go to talk about the alcohol taxes, there's something else that you remember in our conversations with Deanne Fetko and Heather Harris as to kind of some of their needs. Do you recall that I didn't mention?
I mean, aside from the staffing, I think one of the things that I had highlighted is that usually these positions where you're required to maintain credentials, there's education support for, getting your clinical education requirements to maintain your licensure, and that's not included right now for that staff.
Yes. And I think the other thing that she mentioned is the health department's building itself needs a lot of work, needs some attention. Their working environment, the building is very old, and she had asked in working with maintenance and operations to get some improvements in their building. And as you may recall, when we talked about maintenance and operations in their capital program, there is $2.5 million in there for some maintenance of their boilers and some emergency HVAC type of work. So outside those two things, Tasha, I think that we had, I think, $20 million in requests from departments. The health department was 9 or 11 million of that. So we were not able to accommodate a lot of things that they were looking for. So I don't have anything else to talk about the health department. I think before I get to the alcohol tax, Jonathan, you were not available when we got to the last week. So can we spend a little bit of time, Mr. Chairman, just talking about finance?
Yes, I think that's a good idea. Actually, I'd like to go into that.
So, finance. So the finance department, as you will, just as a reminder, the finance department actually has 4 different, I guess, departments underneath it, and they include Treasury, Public Finance, and Treasury is the one that basically responsible for all of our revenue tracking and billing and taxing. Public finance is responsible for our investments and when we go to do bond ratings or do any of that kind of thing. If we're going to do small loans or do a leasing program, public finance takes care of that. And then we have property appraisal, and many of you know what property appraisal does. It's probably the largest portion of the finance department as a whole. And then the third one is the controller, and that includes our accounting, our grant accounting section there, and there's about 20 of those individuals. So of the 92 people that you see in the finance budget, think about a little more than a third of them are in property appraisal. About a fifth of them are in the controller. There's a very small percentage. I think there's only like 6 in public finance, and then the balance of them are in treasury. So there was as it relates to those individual groups, Jonathan and myself and Alex Slifka, the CFO, these individuals report directly to the CFO, that is their executive manager. And so when we met with them, I think they gave a pretty good explanation about where their needs were. The 21 proposed budget really sort of focuses on property appraisal and the work that they have been doing to update the system that we use to do property appraisal. And that's our CAMA system. And so in 2021, what we have is the debt service for the lease, the money that we borrowed to upgrade a system that was, I think, 25 or maybe 25 years older or older. So the service is coming online. I think the plan is it will be up and working on September of 21. So we will be having a debt payment beginning next year. Obviously, they're making some changes in their salaries, their overtime. Public finance, there's a little bit of contractual increases on the folks that we hire to help us in our revenue management. We have a couple private firms that help us with our investment portfolio. So there's a little bit of a contractual increase there. And then we have some one-time work as we turn on property appraisal. We're going to have a cutover process, and we're going to have some support that we're going to need. And we're also going to have some one-time for documentation and training. We're going to give them a little bit more money to do that. And then as similar to the other departments, their executive salaries and the non-representative salaries will remain flat. So those, the 9,200 and the 42,000, what we do there is that's a subtraction from the 161,000 that you see above, where it says salaries, benefits, and adjustments. We included all of that, and then when we did the roll over, and then we got to the changes that we wanted to make, the administration's proposing to reduce that amount for those types of positions. And then the property appraisal, we're going to have, we had an individual who was charging to the capital project who won't be able to do that anymore. The project's done, they'll be charging to operating, and then we have some Oracle licensing. I think the controller in the past has been asking for additional personnel and support. They did not this year. Public finance was looking for some additional support to help manage where, sort of help manage some of the short-term borrowing. We were not able to accommodate that. In Treasury, the only place that Treasury asked for additional support was as a result of the implementation of the alcohol tax. And when we see the alcohol tax, they are going to have 2 positions to help manage that. So Jonathan asked a lot of questions about sort of how are things going? Are they calming down? Are they getting better? Are they getting worse? You know, as it relates to workload and maybe morale, and kind of do you have a sense of how that's working inside finance? Just because, you know, at the time we're in a reduced revenue, reduced ability to expend, and then COVID hit us, and they have been responsible for managing all of that. So I'll let Jonathan jump in if there was anything that I did not mention related to your conversations or our conversations with finance, Jonathan.
No, that was great, Lance. Additional context there is I think there was some desire for of change to slow, which I think a lot of us are experiencing these days. But there was some direct commentary that the administration has pursued a lot and has a lot on its plate, and they were desirous of a chance to kind of get through that stuff before having something else tossed on their plate. And then the other thing that I think is worth mentioning is that our controller has been doing double duty as the controller for MLMP as well as the city. That's clearly a wear and tear situation from a personnel level. And as well, I'm sure that there will still be involvement as we wrap up the sale of MLMP for some time, that situation should get better for the controller as those MLMP duties wind down. That was, I think, expecting a lot out of that individual in that position to be able to do that. So that's all I've got to add.
Okay. Thank you, Jonathan. Okay. Lindy, I know that you were not able to join us last week. Is that correct?
Yeah, I was out of town, unfortunately, so I missed that work session.
Okay. I'll briefly just say what we talked about APD. I told them that you were going to be joining the academy and moving into APD pretty soon. And,
oh, great.
Yeah. But I think just to recap really quick, what I told them is that the chief had most of his high priority requests were non-labor. He had a significant request to help him with his phone charges. He also had some IT needs, some technology needs that he was working on. As it related to his labor, he wasn't asking for any additional sworn officers. The new sworn officers that he received, non-sworn that he received in 2020, helped ease the overtime in his dispatch, which was great. And then the additional personnel that they put on related to evidence as basically eliminated the wait time for people that might have come to APD for documentation as it relates to APD. And I think they're down to a 2-week wait. I think the other things that he mentioned is his fleet. He works with maintenance and operations, but their fleet is a bit aging and they're going to need some help there. The recruitment that he has an attrition academy. They plan to run those academies this year. And the only addition that we were able to add to APD's budget was about a $90,000 hit for some additional costs, contractual costs related to their headquarters building downtown. We were not able to include the non-labor information for the phone bills and the technology in it. At the same time, I mentioned that the administration is putting together a ballot proposition that would be similar to the fire department's ballot proposition last year or this year, where the fire department put out a ballot proposition to adjust the taxes to put their some of the fire department equipment in a lease. So basically some of their gurneys, their life packs, their AEDs, the things that they use, they do that now through a lease program. The police department is looking to do that, or the administration is looking to do that in 2021. It would include their CAD RMS system. The CAD system is the system they use in their dispatch, and it also is linked to their reporting system. And for APD, it's getting pretty old and they need to replace it. They've been working with the vendor and not been successful over the last, I think, 3 or 4 years to get that updated. And I think we've come to terms and settled that you can't help us and we can't get your help. So also on the ballot initiative would be the, there's another piece of technology, and it would also include the inclusion of the body cameras. And so the police department, I think, and as it relates to the body cameras, the chief basically said, look, we're not opposed to them. It's just a lot of data management and a lot of additional requirements to manage the data if that's what we're going to do. And they may need some additional support if, one, we do it, and two, you know, how do we use them? So I think I shared that with the group last week, and that's my quick summary. Lindy, if you have anything to add to that, or if any members of the BAC want to add to that, I will yield to you first, Lindy.
I don't have anything really. That sounds about in line with what, you know, we talked about with Chief Dahl last time. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Yeah, I think you summarized it when you gave your little a briefing, but I just want to say, in addition to the briefing, that was how their budget works. So those, I think, for the departments that you guys review, that's all of them except for the port. And I'm gonna, I think we can show the port slide. I'll ask Lila to jump to that one, and then we'll go to the alcohol tax. There's really no, while Lila's pulling that up, Alyssa, there's really no changes to the port that is in the 21. I think the one thing that they did do is they had some positions that they do through a reorganization they are not going to fund, and they're going to move those dollars to some improvements on the small boat harbor. So it's just the reconciliation page.
Yeah, thanks, Lance.
So I think
connected with the port. Yeah, I connected with the port and asked them, you know, how are things going in this budget and what were their thoughts on it, and they didn't have any particular concerns. There were they really just kind of the same message as when we had talked to them, which is just wanting kind of general support. And we're happy that we were talking about the budget and that sort of thing. So I don't really have any big questions or concerns, unless anybody else has questions or concerns about the port's budget.
We didn't change it very much. We didn't change it at all, except for a request that they had. So I just wanted you guys to be aware of that, because that was one of the departments that you picked to review. So, okay.
Thank you.
Okay. I'm going to ask Lila to go now to the one slide. When we did our presentation on October 23rd to the Assembly, we ended with the alcohol tax. And so at 12:40, they are going to, can you guys see that? It's kind of small. There we go. So for the alcohol tax, what the administration has done is they had proposed we separated the use of the alcohol tax from the rest of the budget. And instead of blending them, we've included them in one particular location. And this is a snapshot of what is in Appendix R. So what the administration had proposed is that in the health department, particularly as it relates to homelessness, mental health, and substance abuse. As you remember, there's, I think, three primary categories is the use of the alcohol tax. One of them was first responders. The other one was programs that address child abuse, sexual assault, domestic violence, and then programs that supported homelessness, mental health, and substance misuse. So in the proposed budget, the administration put together a list of programs that they're working on, that they're going to be reviewing here. The first one is a Pay for Success program. I'll talk about this one briefly, but this is a program that we started early on this year, and it is basically a program where nonprofits or other entities outside the municipality provide the types of services that are related to programs that related to homelessness or other social issues that get people back on their feet. And I think it's primarily related to programs to get people back in housing. The way the Pay for Success works is providers are, they basically bid on the work, for lack of a better word, or they're selected to do the work. And if they are successful in assisting individuals with needs as they relate to housing, then based on a set of criteria, we then pay them based on their success. And so the total amount of the program is $4.5 million. The funding for the program was initially to be through a borrowing program. The administration is suggesting that rather than borrowing the money, that and then paying that back over, I think, a 4 or 5 year period, that we would use the alcohol tax, the basic guidelines of the purpose of what's going on in the homeless and mental health substance abuse. And so that is why that one is there. Also in the health department for the alcohol, a homeless program coordinator, an accountant that would help with basically managing things related to homelessness, grants that come in the door or grants going out the door related to the alcohol tax, if grants are being provided to nonprofits. And then there were some contracts involved with that. There will be some management there. The operations coordinator, the thought would be either in the at the treatment center and the other buildings that the municipality is looking for shelter and transitional housing. There would be an individual inside the health department that would help in the coordination of those types of activities, and then some support staff to those individuals. The senior officer and then the epidemiologist would be part of that as well. The next thing that the administration has had is that, as I mentioned, the health department is brought on individuals, nurses, and then aides, and then I forgot, and a supervisor. And in the time of COVID, these individuals after COVID would then be moved on and to support the health department in programs that are relevant to the programs relevant to the alcohol tax. So that is that's that 1.3 million. And then the next ones are some non-labor funding to support those things above it. The overnight 50 individuals. What this one is, the health department currently has $785,000 or $735,000 to support overnight sheltering of individuals for a part of the year. This $360,000 would be that, as I understand it, would be the balance of the year. There's also a desire to put some dollars together for early education grants to providers, and then evidence-based grants to providers. I have to be honest, I don't know as much about these as the health department. So I would have to kind of go back and ask them a little bit more about that one. This next one, this domestic violence and sexual assault program on the bottom, there is a APD, a person in the police department and the Department of Labor clerk that helps support the local program in doing this. I believe the grant is going away. And so with that grant being gone, in order to keep those services alive in 21 for an entire year, we would use the alcohol tax to do that related. And then the last one is, I guess, a placeholder, for lack of a better word, because it doesn't include all of the philanthropic portions of where the support would be coming from to operate the shelters, the day center, daycare, the day centers, and then the treatment center. So at the time we put this together in October, a lot of conversations were being pulled together with those philanthropic organizations, also grant opportunities that the health department has from community development block grant program. So I know that these numbers are going to get massaged a little bit So that is the primary bulk of the dollars here. Outside these in the health department, this $8 million, there's another 700,000 you saw in the parks department that goes to year-round cleanup. There's about 300,000 that's going to go to the library. They have some local counselors that would happen inside there, some career, I think they're career counselors, and then some peer navigators to helping people navigate the social system and then direct them to resources. A lot of people go to the library for those answers. They don't go to the health department. And so there was a request to be had there. The assembly is aware of that. And then the last little piece is some dollars for Treasury to manage the tax itself. I will say that when the assembly saw this, they had some serious concerns about, well, they had some questions about the pay for success. They wanted to learn a little bit more about that. It was sort of a surprise to them. But I think the thing they had to concern mostly about was the linkage of the public health nurse supervisors, those nurses, those 1.3 million, directly related to the benefit and the services being provided to the homeless, mental health, and substance abuse. So I do think that at 12:40, that will be the conversation. The last piece I'll add, and I'll turn it over to you, Mr. Chairman, is when the assembly was talking about the allocation of the alcohol tax, they were really, I think, trying to even the total dollars being projected to be received in the three categories that they could be used for. In the administration's response, there was no dollars set aside for the alcohol tax for first responders. Part of that reason was, and it's possible we didn't illustrate that very clear, but there are CARES Act funds that were allocated towards first responder type of activities that would be similar to those under the alcohol tax, helping address the core team or helping APD or the fire department in when people come in, when they take them to a hospital or they take them to a care facility, or if APD needs to find some place where they need some social work support at that level in those departments. We had some CARES Act funding that we don't believe is going to be fully spent. So as we move into 21, they would be used for that. I do think the Assembly's conversations, they're going to want to divide the alcohol tax, I think, a little bit more evenly among those three groups. Maybe a little different proportionally, maybe not even, but different proportions to first responders, child abuse, sexual assault, domestic violence, and the homelessness, mental health. I don't know how that is actually going to look, but I do think what we see for the health department, it's going to change. I think the nurses are probably going to be the thing there. The opportunity for the nurses is they are funded with CARES Act funds right now. I think we put a total of $2.3 million in the health department, and they're not going to spend all of that in 2020. So there will be a balance that can carry over into 21. So if the alcohol tax is not available for the nurses or the supervisors or the aides, and they're not doing alcohol tax related stuff, but they're more related to the COVID response, those positions that the health department is currently hiring, will be able to keep those into 21. And if a vaccine comes in and the pandemic starts to calm down and it's not as severe as it is right now, in 2022, we can then transition to those services to more alcohol tax related, unless we do a combination. So I don't have a lot more guidance, and I know the Assembly is looking to the BAC for their thoughts about the allocation of the alcohol tax. So the work session that was scheduled for last Friday got canceled, and it got rescheduled for today. Had they had that work session, I would have been able to provide you a little bit more insight to their thinking, but unfortunately I don't right now. So I think that's where I want to leave off the alcohol tax and just turn it over to you, Mr. Chairman, and the members of the BAC at this point on the alcohol tax.
Yeah, let's see. I think you know, with the remainder of our time, and we have until 12:30, right, Lance?
Yes.
Then does it make sense for us to focus more on the alcohol tax or on our main budget resolution for 2021?
I would suggest you do the latter, and here's the reason why. Let's figure out where the assembly and the administration might be coming together here by 2 o'clock. And then if we get a product of that, I will send that out to you guys, and we can talk about that on the 12th, and then put it in place then. I think that'd be better.
Okay. Yeah, I think that probably makes sense then.
Okay.
So yeah, then
Okay.
then I'd like to, or sorry, then I would like to, you know, open it up to the members of the BAC, and start talking about what thoughts we have on the 2021 budget, and what sort of language we might want to go into our resolution that we pass. You know, what's some input from the group? What are you guys seeing or thinking or wanting to weigh in on?
Mr. Chairman, maybe to prime the pump a little bit, here's what I've drafted so far, and after our discussion, I will send it to all of you and you can get some thoughts. And so here, this resolution looks a little bit like last year's. There's some changes, and I'll talk about that. So I think the second whereas, what I talked about here is I just wanted to recognize the efforts that you guys took this year in reviewing departments. I do think the Assembly knows that, but I think in this resolution, they're going to appreciate that. So, you know, you actually guys took the time, a lot more time. So I included that in here. The next one just talks about, you know, general challenges that we have. And then again, recognition that the state's resources are not really going to be afforded to us for operating and capital. So if you want to maintain a similar language, that goes there. I tried to point out that based on, I think what I heard is, unless you have, you know, make some comments about your support for the priorities that continue in public safety and homelessness. The highlighted areas I'm going to put in here is where I think I'm trying to capture what I think you guys talked about. The first one is, again, the fire academies. The second one, or the second highlighted, is I was trying to capture the conversation that Lindsay had regarding to M&O. And basically the point being is that they got a lot of work, but their fleet is in trouble. It's a challenge. You know, I put some statistics in here that I didn't have earlier, but the last part was, you know, the BAC making sure that since they're aging fleet, we do have some support for make sure that they get the positions they're looking for and support their parks budget. The next one has to do with Parks and Rec. And Carla, I tried to address the one thing that you mentioned, which is they really need to be aware of the maintenance and the preventive maintenance in their facilities. And they're doing it with hardly any money, and they don't get any more money. So if there is any more money, you know, that's where they should be putting it, at Parks and Rec. I tried to say it there. Tasha, for the health department, and for the rest of you, I tried to say what can't be said would take a book. The health department is really kind of pulled out all the stops. So I tried to recognize the work that they've done, support the additional stuff that they're looking for as it relates to their response to the pandemic without being specific to positions or type. And then really, if they need support in the alcohol tax to shore up the services they need to provide, we do that. So I put those three together because based on our work session, I think I captured the point without being specific. So I included that, and then I talked a little bit about the capital budget, and not very much. We haven't talked about AWU yet, but I did mention that really of all of the utilities, AWU has really been hit with their situation with loss of revenues. I mean, they got hit like a business in COVID, but the demand for their water or sewer hasn't gone down. Their budget's, I think, 4+% less than it was last year. And we may make some changes in 1Q if the revenue's turned around. We're looking at figuring out how the CARES funds could be helping there. So in a nutshell, that's kind of where I have the highlights in your resolution right now. But please, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, this is just to get your thought process rolling. I'm hoping that you can add to it. I'm hoping that you will edit it. And then Lila can start plugging in some notes here as you guys talk about that, and we'll shore it up and send it out. So I think that's where I am right now based on what I know where you want to go. But please jump in and add away.
Thanks for taking the lead on getting this drafted, Lance. I think that helps us a lot to start from a good point. So let's, I'd love it if if the BAC members want to weigh in and start talking through some of these things and what language we want to include here.
Hi, this is Carla. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, go for it, Carla.
Okay. If you're asking for some feedback right now, I was going to just edit it and send it back. But I think one of the important things, thank you, Lance, for putting in all of our concerns. I really appreciate that. But I also wonder if we should put in something that's going to support the changes that we made. Like if I look at just Parks and Rec by itself, just because I know that one a little more intimately, if we talk about the fact that preventative maintenance will basically be cheaper in the long run, they can fund it up front and keep everything in working order, or they can just keep throwing money at fixes. And so yeah. I think that obviously they're smart people, they probably understand that, but part of me just feels like it might be important to make sure that there's a good solid reason for some of the things that we're presenting to them.
You know what? That's an excellent point, Carla. I will edit this to point out the benefit of doing more in preventive maintenance. I'm going to ask Lila to just put some notes on this for me, and then just show benefit to preventive maintenance.
Yeah, and then if anybody else also has something like that with the changes that they asked for.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, I will do that, Carla. Again, I put this together last night. I thought it would be helpful for us to just kind of prime the pump today, knowing that we wouldn't get it done today. And outside the specifics, to Carla's point, are there global things that you guys want to mention? I think, you guys know that the budget is basically flat. At the same time, where the property taxes, due to the results of the tax cap, it's based on the proposed budget, property taxes are going to go up, while the overall total budget itself is going to be it's basically flat. And that tax cap adjustment is a result of, three main things. If you guys want some of that in there, I will be glad to give you some information if you think that's relevant. The cost of the dollar, sort of more policy level stuff.
Yeah, Lance, and I actually that's one thing I always like to try to look for or point out is whether the budget is is increasing or decreasing or flat in real terms, and it is in fact very flat in real terms, if not even slightly decreasing versus 2020. So actually I think some language, I'm trying to think of how to put that to words, but I think something that points out the fact that it is like a fairly fiscally restrained budget. I know there's always the perception that the muni is growing its spending footprint and all of that kind of stuff, and I always like to be the one who points out that that's not true. That's not actually happening.
Representation of budget. Okay, I will then put. I'll put some words together there, Nolan, and if you have some suggestions, send them my way. I'm just going to ask Lila to note so that I don't forget.
Yeah, and the other part to mention with it too is I think that if you probably have the numbers top of mind, Lance, but the proposed capital budget is a bit
Yes.
smaller than last year's, I believe.
It is. It's $6 million less than last year, but it's about $3 million more than the average. I have some language for that. As a matter of fact, the Planning and Zoning Commission, when they reviewed the capital budget and approved it on Monday night, they made that point. I will put it on the bullet below that in red. Under the administration, keep it separate.
Sure.
Yeah. Capital program. Yeah. I'm sorry, Nolan. What was the characterization of your directions?
That it's a decrease from last year, right? A smaller capital program than 2020, right? Proposed.
Yes. Okay. Okay. Is there anything? And again, I'll add this a little. I'll add some words to this. If you guys have some policy level kinds of things as they relate to the budget and the tax cap, or if you have questions related to that, I think that might be probably the place to be appropriating here. The one thing that we haven't spent a lot of time on, the Assembly hasn't spent a lot of time on, is our 6-year fiscal plan. We haven't reviewed it. I brought it up. But what we do in a nutshell in the 6-year fiscal plan is we take a look at, we look 6 years out in general terms of, actually, Lila, do you have it available? I'm going to ask Lila to bring it up. And maybe this is, I think, it's forward looking rather than just next year. Yeah. So in the budget book, it's on page it's in the beginning, it's in the 6-year overview. There's a table at the back, and there's a lot of information in here, but what this table shows is we take a rough projection based on assumptions, and the assumptions are pretty much, they're at the bottom here. But we build this projection, and and the reason I think this is important, and this is, a lot of communities look to and criticize the state for not having a future fiscal plan at some level. We do, but not a lot of people sort of take the attention to look at it. But where it's required, it's a separate approval document in our 6-year fiscal plan. And so the bottom line on this one is in 2020, so I'm going to ask Lila to scroll down a little bit. So these are really the assumptions. We make some assumptions about population. Is it going to change? And then we use, we work with AEDC. We take CPI. We look at where it is right now. We make some projections into the future. Those are important because it affects the taxing. We look at what we think about state revenues are going to happen, local revenues. Are they going to get big? Are they going to get small? Are we going to tax to the cap? What percent of growth are we going to do? The maintenance and operations, do we expect that it's going to get wildly big or less? What kind of dividends are we going to get from the utilities? So what we do is generally, after 21, whatever the change is from 20 to 21, unless we have a projection, we continue that change will be the same in the future unless we know it's going to be a lot or more. We make some assumptions about salaries and benefits and the years, and we make changes about, health insurance, and do we think that people are going to get paid more? The medical, we use 4%, which is frankly more than we've been paying. Anyway, we make these assumptions, and I'm going to ask Lila to roll up. I will say on the revenue side, we are incredibly conservative in this projection. We think that, the revenues outside property taxes with natural growth of the tax cap, they're going to remain flat. So if we're not getting any more federal money or state money or other dollars coming in the door, new revenues, they're pretty much going down or staying flat. All that to be said, we get a balanced budget in 21, so that's the third column over. We get a proposed budget with a balance, and you'll see at the bottom, we are, I'm going to ask Lila to put her hand on the dash right there. So based on that, if we go to 22 with all of these assumptions, we have a $5.2 million deficit that we'll have to overcome in 2022. And then in 2023, we'll have about a $7 million deficit that we'll have to overcome. And again, so those are challenges in looking to the head. Obviously, you could be super rosy about your revenues and super conservative about your expenditures and make that number 0. But we don't. We're trying to be as realistic with what we have. So we haven't spent a lot of time studying this. I just will say that it's a pretty good read. There's a lot of good information. We use the information from AEDC. If we don't include it now, I would encourage you that next year when you're looking at the budget, this is one of the things that you probably would spend a little bit more time on. But the bottom line is we can overcome those things. We can overcome, 5% is not even 1% of a challenge. Now, obviously, if something crazy happens, then these are challenges we'll have to overcome. This is what this table explains. So based on projections, based on assumptions, being pretty conservative about our revenues, we know next year, starting off in 21, we got a $5 million gap to fill. That's what it means. So that's the 6-year fiscal plan. If you guys are comfortable as a group in a position that you want to make a recommendation on this, or as you look to the things that you want to do next year, maybe this is something you focus on. But I think we're getting to a point where this is every year we do this, but I'll just, maybe not now because of limited time, but I will just say that, this is not a bad story.
Sure. I'd be curious to see how well it tracks with with how well the past projections have tracked with the actual budgets.
We can do that. Okay. So maybe back to the resolution.
Sure.
And back to your original question, Mr. Chairman, if there are, kind of broader comments that you guys want to make as a group related to the budget, the operating, the capital, and the utilities, I think this is the time and the place to do that. So.
Yeah, I'd like to hear from the other members. What other thoughts do you guys have?
Hey, this is Alyssa. So I had a handful of thoughts, and I've kind of dropped some of them from my brain as we were talking about other very important things. So a couple things I wanted to mention. I do highly support talking about the tax cap and kind of those broader policies. And Nolan, I echo what you were saying about, emphasizing what's actually going on with budgets in real terms. The other things that I am interested in potentially calling out, one is the body cameras for the police. I know we talk about fully funding their academies and that sort of thing, but I think just from the perspective of, tossing support behind particular pieces of the budget, I've talked with, I know it wasn't my department, but we have a lot of friends who are police officers. And so I just talked to them just kind of generally about their needs and what was going on, especially in light of all that's happened elsewhere this year. And that was something that was echoed a couple of times, was that they actually wanted to have body cameras. And so I think it's worthwhile perhaps to mention that. I'd be really interested to hear, Lindy, what you think about that. I believe it was your department. So I don't know if you don't think that that's something we should call out, then I'm okay with leaving it, but something that I was really excited about on their behalf. The other Carla, I was curious as to your opinion. I think from a policy perspective, aligning duties. I know we're still kind of waiting to hear what Parks thinks about moving the cemetery under the Parks, and what efficiencies might be gained from that. I think just overall kind of that alignment of duties and what people are working on. It kind of just from a logical perspective makes sense that it would be moved. Although I do think it's a great question to say, okay, so we're moving it, the cost is the same, what are the efficiencies? I think overall, just the broad perspective of let's look for opportunities like that to align duties and objectives, I think is something worth supporting. I'm not highly wedded to any of these, but I'm curious as to people's thoughts and would be supportive of adding some language about it.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, because the when body cameras first came up, I think they came up partly as a budget item, like, well, we'd like to have them, but we're not budgeted for them currently. I think that was how I first heard about it, talked about for Anchorage.
Members of the BAC, have you had a chance to see the proposed language or the idea of the ballot proposition? I think it's actually only been in a conversation with the Public Safety Committee, but I will follow up with that. And if that material is available, I will send it to you. I read some early drafts, and then as a group, if you think that is something, I don't know if it's related so much to the budget, but when we get to the ballot initiatives, it might be the time to actually weigh in on the body cameras when we do the bonds and the ballots. I will send you the information that I have, and then the timing of it, because if it's not sort of fleshed out, I don't know if it's timely that the BAC weigh in, because there might be a lot of questions that the Public Safety Committee is looking at, administration doesn't have answers to, or the APD is looking at. But let me find out what I have. I do think that you should weigh in at some point. I'm just thinking that, and frankly, I'll ask the Assembly and the administration, when would be best?
I support it. That sounds good to me.
Okay, that's a great point, Alyssa.
Yeah, Lance, this is Lindy. I had a quick question about what, I guess you're going to look it up potentially, but with the body cameras in regards to the ballot initiative, is that just, and again, this might be what you're looking at, but is it just the purchasing of the cameras, or is it the whole data package as well? It's the whole thing.
It's the whole thing, and frankly, of the whole thing, the body cameras is a pretty small part. Okay.
So that was my my understanding was that, it was the data needs and the system things that were preventing them more than, getting the body cameras itself. But if it's that whole package, then I'm super in support of that. And I agree with you, Alyssa.
Okay.
But if it's more appropriate to address it somewhere else, then I'm also fine with that.
I'll contact the Assembly Chair and the Mayor and see what they think, where you could weigh in. And Nolan, if you get a chance to do it as the Chair, you might want to ask them as well.
Sure, absolutely.
Is there anything else from the members that you'd like captured in the resolution?
Is it, I don't know if this is in keeping with what we normally do, but does it make sense to talk about the fact that property taxes are going to go up a little bit, and property taxes going up is mainly a function of the school bond debt reimbursement, and then some of the other taxes under the cap, correct, being lower?
So two parts. The number that I gave you of the taxes going up, that's just related to general government. So in addition to that, the school bond debt reimbursement, that's going to be an interesting conversation when Andy gives us his brief next week, because the school bond debt is going to go up, but their costs are going to go down. And so with the debt going up and their day-to-day operation costs going down, I don't know how that at the end of the day is going to affect their side of the taxes. Does that make sense?
Sure.
Yeah. I think on the general government side for the taxes and the tax cap, for those of you who are interested in that, I think the place to go to in the budget is the overview. But I can characterize kind of why, the ingredients of why the tax cap is going to go up. It's really sort of three things. And if that's helpful, I can put that down on paper and you guys can massage it. And if you don't like it, take it out. But tax cap. I will put something in there and then you guys can chew on that and address it, and hopefully I get some feedback on that one.
Sure, that would be good. And Lance, can you scroll up to the top of the resolution again?
Yes.
One thing I was wanting to look at is, okay, your second whereas there you talk about all our work meeting with the individual departments. Yeah. Okay. So I wanted to make sure that was in there. I think that that's something that reflects well on us that I like to be able to speak to with the assembly is the depth of review that we were able to give to those individual departments.
Yes. So I'll make all of these changes. I'll try to get to it this afternoon and send it. If you guys could get me your comments by Tuesday, then I can turn it around on Wednesday and you guys will have it for Thursday.
Yeah, that sounds really good, Lance.
Okay. So in the remaining 10 minutes of the meeting, I kind of want to talk about a couple things, if that's okay with you.
Please.
Okay. Looking at the remainder of the year, we basically have one more scheduled meeting, and that is on December 3rd. What I would like you guys to do, if you are available, is to continue this meeting until November 12th. And I think Lila will look to find a time. We can meet at our regular 11:30 to 12:30 timeframe. And the way in which you would do that, Mr. Chairman, is instead of adjourning this meeting, you would continue this meeting until that meeting. That's one approach. The other one is you can adjourn this one and then schedule a special meeting, and we'll do it on the 12th at that time. So either way, it's just whether or not you guys will have enough of a quorum to meet on the 12th. So do I have enough? Will I have enough BAC members to have, first of all, will I have a chair and or a vice chair? And will I have at least 6 members?
Looking at my calendar now, I'm good for next Thursday. I can do it.
Okay, Alyssa, can you do it?
I have meetings on either end, so I'll be late and I'll have to leave early, but I can be here in the middle.
Okay, and Jonathan, can you do it, please?
Yes, sir.
Okay, Carla?
Sorry, I had to get off mute. Yeah, I think I'm available.
Great. Jimmy?
I think Jimmy left.
Okay, I'll check. Lila will follow up. Lindy? Can you make
I should be able to, yeah.
Okay, and Tasha?
Yes.
Thank you. Lindsay, did you make it on?
Don't see Lindsay.
All right, Lila, will you follow up? Okay. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to follow up with Jason. We have some vacancies, and now that I don't know if it ever slows down or calms down for him. It's just it's a smaller hurricane. So I think he's in a category 2 right now instead of a category 5. So he should be able to handle the 110 mile an hour winds, and I'll see if I can get some more members, and then we'll do that. So we'll get it scheduled for next Thursday. And so you can, I guess what you can do is just adjourn this meeting. We'll put an agenda out for a new meeting and we'll post it for the 12th. And so before you get to the end, that would be my advice before you close. And then a couple more things. We're getting to that point where if the BAC wants to start thinking about doing a strategy meeting for 21, obviously we're going to have to do it remotely. I don't know if it even makes sense. I can get a room big enough where we can all get in it and be 10 feet apart. But I think the wise thing to do would probably be to do it with teams. So I would just ask you guys to think about that. The alternative is look at the strategic plan that you've done this year, mark off the things that you accomplished, figure out the things that you wanted to do and didn't do, and then we can kind of put that together individually. You guys bring that to the table at your December meeting, and then we'll put together something, or maybe we do it, probably prior to the December meeting, and then you guys can decide if you want to have a Teams meeting in December to figure out what you want to do in 21, or we'll do it in January. So just put that on your mind if you could. And,
Okay. Yeah, that yes, I appreciate that. Thanks, Lance. I think I think our strategic planning has been a very productive exercise for us.
Okay, it is helpful for me to provide structure to what I want to do for you. And I will invite Andy and Desiree to that conversation as well. So. Okay,
good. Let's see then. Then I think with that we can adjourn. We can adjourn and then we're going to do it as not a continuation but a different meeting.
Correct, please.
That would
Yes.
make sense.
Yes.
Well, with that, then I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
This is Tasha. Move to adjourn.
Thank you, Tasha. Is there a second?
This is Alyssa. I'll second. Oh, sorry.
Okay. Alyssa beat someone else to the punch there. Then with that, unless there's any opposition, I think we can adjourn. And I want to really thank Lance and Lila for the time and effort that they're putting into helping support the BAC as we craft this resolution and deal with the budget season. So thank you very much.
Yes,
You're
thank
entirely
you.
welcome. You're entirely welcome.
Hope everyone enjoys the rest of their day. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.